The Chargers seemed like they were ready for the challenge on Sunday, playing very well early, but as the injuries piled up, the Steelers pulled away.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 9 seasons, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers, as always, for making us your first listen, especially after a game like we saw on Sunday. We always appreciate you guys, and to make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Well, Daniel, the Chargers dropped the game to the Pittsburgh Steelers after coming in trying to be that physical football team, trying to change the identity. They ran into a real physical football team, and unfortunately, the injuries really piled up in this one, and it just didn't go their way. On defense, it was up and it was down, and the Chargers' offense rushing attack, it just wasn't there for them in this game. After 2 great performances in Week 1 and Week 2, and Week 3 against the Steelers front, it disappeared.
Yeah, and we learned a lot about this team on Sunday, but the biggest thing just hanging over them now is what is the impact going to be for these injuries they sustained? You're talking about Justin Herbert, Rashawn Slater, Joey Bosa, Joe Alt. All of those things still hang in the balance. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. David, it looked like the game we thought it was going to be in the first half, with the Chargers end up losing 20-10. But the first half, it was a slugfest, right? Each team got their own. I mean, the Chargers looked really good, I thought, offensively and defensively in this game. And it looked like they were 2 pretty evenly matched, pretty evenly physical type of teams. And then the injuries started piling up, right? It's Rashawn Slater leaves, comes back in, doesn't look like himself. And at this point, it's 10-10, right? It's anybody's ball game.
Yeah.
Rashawn Slater comes back, then Justin Herbert gets hurt, a sack after that. Joey Bosa has to leave very early in this game with a hip injury, which I'm guessing is just a re-aggravation of his back injury, all I'm sure connected. Then you even have Joe Alt at the end of the game limping around. It was a game of attrition in the most literal sense of the word, David, and it felt like the Chargers did have the right plan. Things worked well really early on, but they weren't able to kind of take the gut punch and respond, and ended up falling in this game 20-10.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about this football game, it really is kind of a tale of 2 halves. In the first half, the Chargers were right there. I mean, they were flying around. They had a lead. They were up 10-7, at the halftime. And, they were able to, kind of execute their game plan. They were making some good, safe throws. They were able to move down the football field. The defense was flying around. They were hitting people in the open field. Like they were up for this game. Like you could tell they were wanting to, prove that they were that kind of physical defense that, everybody saw through the first 2 weeks of this season. But then you said it, the injuries just came, and they were gigantic ones, like the game altering. I mean, whenever your quarterback goes down, your left tackle, your best edge rusher, I mean, we're not talking about your backup players here. We're talking about your best players on your football team going down with an injury, and then having to try to, on the fly, make adjustments and come up with new combinations on the offensive line. And it just went to a dark place when all of those adjustments had to be made. Unfortunately, they did not bear fruit.
And at this point, right, with the injuries and who the injuries happen to, it feels like just make it to the bye week, hope you can regroup, and then go on a run after that. It feels almost impossible at this point that they're going to beat Kansas City next week, even if Justin Herbert comes back. But it's just not only Justin Herbert. But I think the big thing that people were questioning after a game like this, especially a game in which we knew that Justin Herbert late in the week had a high ankle sprain, missed practice after being able to practice on Thursday, missed on Friday. And we didn't even know what the Friday practice report was going to be, right? We didn't even know about the high ankle sprain when we recorded our last show last week. We didn't get to have the conversation of should Taylor Heinicke start. But now those questions are going to be here, David, because it did look like Justin Herbert, we know now that he re-aggravated, at least before any of the MRIs or anything are done, the ankle injury that he already had. He was limping badly. You have Jim Harbaugh saying, hey, as soon as I saw a limp, that was the plan. If he limps at all, we're bringing him out. Maybe not the best strategy. At the same time, hindsight is 2020, but I'm sure if they knew now what they did, then what they do now, like they don't play Justin Herbert in this game. They know they're going to lose already. And the worst part of it is he actually looked great. Like it was the best start to any game he had. He carried the offense in the first half, had a great touchdown pass to Quentin Johnston in the game, a great play call. But the play calling devolved, the play devolved, people started getting hurt. And now it's like, okay, well, maybe it wasn't the best idea to be playing your star quarterback in this game, but this is a huge, crucial AFC matchup that you wanted to win.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you're going into this type of situation, when you have a guy like Justin Herbert who is as tough as nails, like played through several very significant, very serious injuries, you always want to give him the benefit of the doubt, and also you just know how damn good he is. He showed it. At one point in this game, he completed his first 9 passes in a row.
Yeah.
And looking really, really good. But now, we sit here with, him re-aggravating the ankle injury and, going into this game against the Kansas City Chiefs. It's like, I don't think I want him to play. Even if he is ready, like even if he feels like, he's, and I don't know how he could be. I mean, if it's a high ankle sprain, this is an injury that typically, takes 5, 6, 8 weeks for, the normal person to recover from. Now, obviously, Justin Herbert is far from the normal person. Like we know that, he's a superhuman, freak athlete, but he is still human at the end of the day. So I would just feel a lot better, if you give him this week, give him an extra week with the bye week to try to get as healthy as possible going into the stretch run. I think that gives yourself and your team the best chance to be productive and go out there and win football games later on in the season. You just would hate for this to be something that takes him out and then really changes the fortunes and, the dreams and aspirations of this team.
And just the trajectory of this team, obviously, if they don't have him, even if it is Taylor Heineke. But unfortunately, if it's just Justin Herbert, right, and you have the full kind of supporting cast around Taylor Heineke, you like what he's able to do as a backup. But now you're talking about both of your tackles being hurt, which is easily the other biggest story from this game, because the biggest turning point was Rashawn Slater getting injured, trying to come back in the game. He immediately gives up a bad sack that is a forced fumble on Justin Herbert, where he just got beat easily by the Steelers' third best edge rusher, right? And it just doesn't happen.
Never happens. Yeah.
And it comes out, it's a pectoral injury. Jim Harbaugh said after the game, seemed to be a strain of the pec. We'll see. The MRIs hadn't been done at that point, and I think it's just hard to understate how important it is for that to come back as non-serious news. Then you also have Joe Alt getting injured in this game too, who looked actually very good against TJ Watt. Did have one just play where he got straight up beat by TJ Watt, which is going to happen against that guy. But I thought a very encouraging performance from him. Now it's unclear if either of those guys are gonna play next week, and we saw what this offensive line looked like when it had to be shuffled around, and it wasn't great. But I mean, now, David, it's just holding your breath to hope that this is something that both these guys, by the time the bye week's over in a couple of weeks, can be back on the field.
Yeah, I mean, them being on the field is paramount to the success of this football team with Justin Herbert at quarterback or anyone else at quarterback, because they cover up so much of the deficiencies on this offensive line and their ability to handle the one-on-one situations, their run blocking. Like Joe Alt, Rashawn Slater have been phenomenal when they are healthy and they're on the football field. They were stoning people left and right through the first couple of games. Hopefully they're able to get through this without being seriously injured. They can get healed up and they can join Justin Herbert for that stretch run we want to see them go on.
Because this game was bad and it sucks to take an L, but I don't think this game really changes what you thought the Chargers could be, which is a scrappy team that's a good enough team to potentially contend for a playoff spot, which is always kind of what we were hoping for in the first year of Jim Harbaugh. Maybe it's easy to get carried away and think they could be more than that, but these are the things that are the harsh realities where it's okay, they look good with everybody. What do they look like when they don't have these guys? And we got a little taste of it on Sunday, unfortunately, and there's going to be a lot of shifting and moving parts these next couple of weeks. after the bye week, it could look like a very different team with guys in different spots because something has to change. And I think this is a good learning lesson to kind of see where those sore spots are. But the Chargers defense had a very up and down game. Penalties killed them somewhat. They also had a missed tackle by Asante Samuel Jr. that killed them. But I'm not ready to give up on the defense just yet. I didn't think it was a terrible performance. And I thought a lot of what happened late in the second half was just a factor of them being on the field so darn much. So we're going to get into the defense performance, the good and bad for Derwin James, and the same story, unfortunately, for Joey Bosa, and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, I need to tell you guys about DoorDash, though, because football is finally back, which means it's time to order your favorite game day food, snacks, and drinks on DoorDash without missing a play. There was definitely a few plays I could have missed on Sunday, because that was just really, really hard to watch. But DoorDash is also great when your team loses as well, because there's a lot of times you don't want to go out in public. You're decked out in Chargers gear after a game like that. You would much rather get your favorites delivered to your house, and at least it was an early game where I got to order a bunch of DoorDash and just snack and feast on that the rest of the day to kind of eat my feelings away a little bit. But DoorDash, just for any game day, can take a lot of the stress away from at least hosting people, not having to worry about cooking for hours and hours. Just get everything that you need delivered right to your door. And you can use the promo code LOCKEDFALL24 for 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 in your first order. Limited time offer, terms apply. Promo is not valid for orders containing alcohol. DoorDash, your door to game day greatness, your door to more. Download the DoorDash app now to order your game day favorites. Must be 21 plus to order alcohol. Drink responsibly. Alcohol available only in select markets. Dave, let's talk about the defense, because I thought the defense came to play on Sunday. I thought that they matched the physicality of a very physical Steelers team well. Look at what they did against the Steelers run game. It's not like they got run all over in this game. But one thing that was very apparent was just at the end of this game, they got run down. They were worn out. They were gassed for sure. But I think overall, I'm not giving up on this defense yet. I thought it was still a good performance overall by a lot of this defense for most of this game. You have a missed tackle that led to a 20-yard gain by Scotty Miller from Asante Samuel Jr. And that's on third down. That gets you off the field. Instead, it turns into a touchdown. Maybe they get a field goal, but they don't get a touchdown on that drive if he makes that tackle. Then you have, give yourself a chance with an interception in the second half, but unfortunately the offense wasn't there. And when you're talking about it getting gassed, the Chargers offense in the second half had 1 first down and 4 punts. That's just brutal for your defense. Yeah. It's unsustainable for your defense. The Steelers grinded out 2 12-play drives and 2 of their first 3 possessions in the second half. That took 12 minutes of time of possession. 12 minutes on 2 drives. It's just unsustainable for a team to be able to keep up and keep making the plays and keep getting it back to your offense when your offense just isn't staying on the field for any extended time at all. So definitely there was some downside to this performance. This is their worst performance yet after a couple of really good performances, but not anything I'm taking too much stock in as far as this defense not being kind of what we thought that they were.
I still don't think that they gave up a ton of explosive plays. Like there weren't obvious miscommunications
before
or bad
the
coverage
game,
calls.
Obviously,
before the end of the
touchdown.
Right, yeah, before the end of the game, right. I'm saying for the most part, for the majority of this football game, I felt like that the Chargers defense was where they were supposed to be. Like they didn't give up, a ton of those back-breaking type of plays that we've seen in years past. So I do feel like this defense is still much, much better than they have been the last few years. But when you're on the field for that long, going up against a very physical team that is just grinding and really wearing on you, that's a lot to take for 60 minutes. And just, towards the end of the game, they were gassed. They were worn out, and it showed. I mean, they put in Cordero Patterson, and Cordero Patterson basically just ran right through the defense and closed out that football game for the Steelers. But the thing is, I saw some good things as well. I mean, the defense was hitting people. They showed some great stopping power. Derwin James was flying around all over the place. Denzel Perriman was knocking people down to the ground, which I loved. So there was still some positives to take out of the defensive performance, but it was just too much for them, too much to ask from your defense, really in any game.
I mean, there are a lot of games we would have wished the Brandon Staley defense would have given up 20 points or less.
Yeah,
right? And at the end of the day, that's what this ends up being. And let's talk about Derwin James, because it did look like a charged up Derwin James, no pun intended. He looked like he was locked in this game. And to be honest, Derwin James feels like a player that should be playing in the AFC North. That's always, he always plays a black and blue type of football. But unfortunately for Derwin James, like, you see the charged up parts of it, but then it also comes with the downside that we've seen from Derwin James that can happen to him over the last couple of years, where it's like he's making big hits. He gets a sack. He gets a couple tackles for loss in this game, but he also aids 2 scoring drives by the Pittsburgh Steelers with a face mask penalty that was bad, obviously, and then an unnecessary roughness against the defenseless receiver, which is like, yeah, good and bad. I think overall, it's a good thing to see him playing that way, to see him flying around, to see him laying the wood, because there was a lot of big hits that weren't penalties too.
Yeah.
But it's you still get a little bit of both, though, and you're trying to cut out one part of it, but do you get the aggressive big hits without also having it come with those penalties too?
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, and it's incredibly difficult because now playing defense in the National Football League is so hard because your tackle
he has a
box,
reputation. So it's
and
different
that
for him.
and that too. Yeah, that makes it even worse. But like just your tackle box, like where you can actually strike the defensive player to where it won't be a penalty, like is very small. Can't do the hip drop tackle, that's a penalty. Can't go high, that's a penalty. So you really have to strike directly in the middle of the player to get them on the ground. But yeah, I mean, hey, this is one of your highest paid defensive players on your team, a leader of your football team, and you just can't have those type of penalties. They are back breakers. Those penalties were massive. I mean, and it wasn't just Derwin James. You know, it was the Chargers in general. They 7 penalties for 69 yards in this game. Like it was really, really bad, Daniel. I mean, that's a lot to overcome. Like, especially when you're going, against a team where you're already behind the 8 ball, you can't have those penalties constantly extending drives to where you have to dig yourself out of a hole you were already supposed to be out of.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like me and you talked about before the show. Like the Chargers defense is good enough to where, we've seen them hold a team to 150 yards for an entire game this year, right? Like to give up 50 free yards on 3 personal foul penalties, even if you disagree with the Khalil Mack one being unnecessary roughness
horrible
roughing the quarterback, it doesn't matter. Like these are just things that you're a good defense, but you still can't afford to do those things. I think just in the case of Derwin James, man, it's just like you just want to see him get back to that all-pro form without it coming with those big penalties that are, leading to points for the other team. And unfortunately, with what he's done the last couple of years and the reputation that he's kind of earned for himself, he's playing even different rules, right? Like it's already kind of very heavily weighted towards the offensive game. But when you're one of those guys and you're a Cam Chancellor or you're a guy that has the reputation of making big hits and potentially having personal fouls, the game's going to be called different for you and you're going to be under the microscope. So we'll see if he can balance that out, because I do think there was a lot of positives. But unfortunately, in this game, we also saw the Chargers lose Joey Bosa. And I want to get to this quickly here just because obviously he is a huge loss. The Chargers pass rush was not the same without him after he was out there, even with the revamped, depth chart there. And unfortunately, David, like, it sucks, man. He's great when he's out there. But so far in 2024, it's nothing like against him personally, but this is the same damn story. Like, this is every year you want to get yourself up to think this could be the year. Ben Herbert comes in. Obviously, we'll have to see how the season plays out as a whole. I'm not just going to, I'm not going to crucify Ben Herbert right now 3 weeks in, even if, especially if we don't know if these are actually serious injuries, which is what we wanted the Chargers to avoid to begin with. But for Joey Bosa, man, like it's almost impossible now to think this is the year that we're going to see that 13-plus game season or see a big sack total season, just because, it's already 2 injuries this year, a broken hand and something that's kept him out of the majority of 2 games.
I've been one of the biggest supporters of Joey Bosa for the longest time since he's been with the Chargers. But after a while, what you see is what it is. And unfortunately, Joey Bosa cannot get over the injury issues. It's been the same thing his entire career. This is no different. And unfortunately, until he shows us consistently that he can stay on the field and play and produce, then you are what your productivity says you are. And unfortunately for Joey, it's all about missing games.
Yeah, that's availability. Yeah. It's just, It sucks because it just feels like it's going a lot closer to Jason Verrett than it is for someone like a Keenan Allen, right? Like Keenan Allen had the moniker of being injury plagued and like had 5 seasons of playing, 15, 16 games in a row and kind of lost that. Now he's been banged up, the last couple of years as he's gotten older. But like,
sure,
I love, him as a player. I think he's one of the Chargers. He's as talented as any Chargers pass rusher. He's probably top 5 most talented pass rusher the Chargers have ever had. And you want to see him to put it together. And it's just hard because it just doesn't feel like we're ever going to see that. And every year you get your hopes up. And it's just at this point, like, there is still a chance he goes out and plays another, 13, 14 games this season. Like, that's a possibility. There's just no way for you to feel good about it based on the track record. And I hope we get to see it. I hope he can maintain it. And this is just, he has a little more dinged up kind of games this year as opposed to big season ending injuries. It's just hard to have, put any stock into that at the moment. But the offense was really, really hampered in this game due to the fact that they weren't able to run the football. And we always wondered what the offense would look like if they couldn't run the football and do what Greg Roman does best. And unfortunately, we got a poor taste of that on Sunday. So we're going to talk about that and the interior line issues that continue to plague this team and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, I need to tell you guys about FanDuel because NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And that is one of always the best things on FanDuel is being able to get a feel for a game and being able to do live in-game betting. But the odds are already out for the Chargers game against the Chiefs on Sunday. And they're opening up as 8.5-point underdogs. That is a big spread. That tells me they do not believe that Justin Herbert is going to play in that game. And I honestly think if it is Taylor Heineke, still a bet I would probably stay away from. I don't know if the Chargers are going to cover 8.5 if it's a backup quarterback. Not just because of Taylor Heineke, because it feels like both their tackles are going to potentially miss this upcoming game too. And we're going to talk about how the interior cannot be trusted. But there's still plenty of good bets on FanDuel. You can get on tonight's action too because we still have more football this week. And you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel, FanDuel.com. David, let's talk a little bit more about some of the issues in this game, especially the ones that stemmed from the running game just not being effective at all. And we knew this game was going to come. We knew there was going to be a day where they wouldn't be able to run the football. And we would see how they responded. And to me, it was basically like this. Justin Herbert carried him and carried the offense, carried the running game or the lack thereof until he couldn't because it was unsustainable in this game. But I do want to tell everyone, thank you so much for making us your first listen, especially after a tough game like this. If you need a second listen, make sure to check out the new lineup on Locked On NFL, where you get 2 shows a day with the madman Tyler Rowland in the morning and the barber Tony Wiggins in the afternoon, giving you the best football talk from local experts that they're bringing in from around the Locked On network. So make sure you guys check that out on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast from. But Dave, let's talk about the running game. This is easily the worst performance that we've saw. This was the first game where the Chargers, at least at some point, didn't dominate the game and dominate the line of scrimmage, dominate with their rushing attack. Overall, it's 19 carries for 61 yards, 3.2 average when you're taking away the Justin Herbert kneel down at the end of the first half. It struggled, and to me, that, like I said, Justin Herbert carried them for a while. He carried the offense. But like when you're, 3/4 through the game and your average distance to gain on third down is like 3rd and 9+ on average, that's just an unsustainable way for this team, how it's constructed, to win games.
Yeah, I mean, they absolutely need the running game to help them stay ahead of the sticks, to help them, be in those second, third, and manageable situations, and they could not get any traction whatsoever. They couldn't, the offensive line couldn't open up any holes. And hey, you got to give credit where credit is due. The Steelers have a nasty defensive line. They have a ton of guys there that can cause a lot of disruption. Cam Hayward was fantastic in this game against the Chargers' interior offensive line. Yeah. But it looks like this. It's 15 carries for 44 yards for J.K. Dobbins and only 3 carries for 9 yards for Gus Edwards, which that one to me doesn't make a lot of sense. And, me and you were talking before this show started about how this might have been a game where you give more touches to Gus Edwards, right? A guy that's a bigger body, that's more of a battering ram, that, maybe, might meet the moment of the physicality that we were seeing in the football game. but that just didn't happen. And they just could not get into any kind of rhythm. And this offense, this Greg Roman offense, this Jim Harbaugh offense is all predicated on being able to run the ball, get explosions out of the running game, stay ahead of the sticks, get in those easy, manageable situations where you can conceivably run on 3rd and short or pass on 3rd and short. But that just didn't happen in this game. So when Justin Herbert went out, there was no running. There was just nothing on offense to speak of. And the running game and the absence of it was a major factor.
Absolutely. I mean, I think when this game started and you saw just the total lack of room for the running game, I mean, I wanted J.K. Dobbins as the way more efficient back to get more touches in this game.
Sure.
And then I started to see how I was playing out, and it's like, this might just be a 3 yards in a cloud of dust offense kind of game with the running game, and you might just need someone like a Gus Edwards that can just get you the hard 3 yards and give up the chance for the explosive play with the J.K. Dobbins a little bit, or at least batter them with Gus Edwards until things start to open up for J.K. Dobbins. And I think we kind of saw what the importance is of Gus Edwards in this game, even if it's 3 for 9 yards. I think you missed that physicality there. But yeah, I mean, it's surprising because J.K. Dobbins averaged like over 100 yards a game against the Steelers in his career. It just wasn't a good game. I thought they got physically dominated, especially on the interior, and I think the interior offensive line was kind of exposed in this game without their 2 elite offensive tackles out there to cover up some of their deficiencies. I mean, this is per Alex Insdorf, who got early PFF grades from this game. These are the lowest grades on the team in order. Zion Johnson, Jamari Sawyer, Bradley Bozeman, and Trey Pipkins were the 4 lowest graded Chargers in this game. And David, we've always wanted the Zion Johnson bump, the leap, the breakthrough, right?
Yeah.
We thought that Bradley Bozeman would be able to come back and play much better as a pass protector than he did last year in Carolina. Trey Pipkins, I still think, has been a plus for changing positions. I don't think he's really been that bad, but
yeah,
those other positions, man, that is the weak link of this offensive line right now, and I felt like it really got exposed in this game.
It did. Yeah, I mean, they were getting caved in by that Steelers defensive line pretty much on every snap. Whether it was, trying to open up holes, that didn't happen. The running backs had no space. In pass protection, they were pushing the pocket and getting in Justin Herbert's face. And when you already have a quarterback that is dealing with an injury that's not as mobile as he normally is, I think you noticed when we were looking at a lot of these pass plays, it was 1, 2, 3, balls out, gone. And obviously Justin can do that when there's not pressure in his face.
Or he's sacked. Right.
Or he's sacked. Yeah. Or he's sacked. That's what happened in this game. But the interior of the offensive line did not do this offense any favors at all. And it's starting to be a problem. Like it is starting, and it's becoming a bigger problem, or at least more noticeable problem, when you have issues with your tackles on the outside and you go up against a higher quality of opponent, which the Chargers are going to have a couple more of those teams that they're going up against this season, that you're going to have to really try to figure out a better formula, a better mix, or just get these guys to play better, because right now it's not good enough.
Well, yeah, you get the best defensive tackle in the league this week. You get Chris Jones coming up against your interior in week 4. So let's do one silver lining here before we get out, David. And I think it is Quentin Johnston who found the end zone again. 3 touchdowns in 3 weeks is something I straight up just would not have believed you if you had told me going into this season.
It's unbelievable to watch. I mean, you can't help but be excited and happy for this kid after all the ridicule. And some of it justified, obviously, was some of the drops. And yeah, he was a 1st-round pick, so expectations were sky high. And unfortunately, he didn't meet those expectations. All he could do was go work, and that work is starting to show itself with 3 touchdowns and being a focal point of this offense. Also, need to give some credit to this coaching staff as well for putting him in better situations to use his ability to get up the field. I mean, we saw that on the second catch that he had, that 17-yard yards that he got on first, getting a 1st down. That was fantastic. That's what Quentin Johnston is capable of doing. But to see him already have 3 touchdowns in really the last 2 games is fantastic for Quentin Johnston. And I couldn't be more happy for him, and can't wait to see what the rest of his season gives us.
Yeah, it's to have already surpassed how many touchdowns he had last year, to not really have like an obvious drop that's totally kind of on him and something he should have been expected to make, like one kind of tough, 50-50 kind of catch in the first game, but that's pretty much it. He's been very, very solid, has made a couple catches through contact, had the nice catch and run. I thought him and Ladd were both good in this game. I mean,
yes, I agree.
Ladd was fired up too, came up with a big third down conversion when Taylor Heineke got in the game. Good throw, good catch there. It's just the offense imploded, so you didn't really get to see what that game could have turned into. And I don't think that either one of those guys is a true wide receiver one. Maybe both of those guys would be playing better if they were in a, or, it would feel a lot better if you had these guys doing what they're doing, but also that number one guy that's, getting all the big things and these guys to supplement that, because they're definitely at least very good supplementary pieces. But like, if they're your entire passing game, it could look like what happened, and I think it would have been better games for both of those guys, but the offense just totally stalled and then couldn't get absolutely anything going at all. So huge ups to Quentin Johnston. Great start to his season. Definitely someone that you feel a lot better about as like kind of a potential building block for this offense, or at least a key contributor as a wide receiver for this team. Him and Ladd McConkey, it feels like the arrow goes up for them after this game. But you guys will have a chance to let us know what you think, because tomorrow we're getting into our buy or sell show, getting into the biggest Chargers storylines and overreactions from this game and going forward for this team. And to make sure you guys hit us up for that, hit us up at Locked On LAC on Twitter, where we'll put a post out where you can call to the voicemail line at 323-524-7924 and leave a 30-second buy or sell there. Overall, man, like, this isn't a punt on the Jim Harbaugh era. This isn't, I think, a game and just the performance of the game that makes you feel a ton differently about this team. They met their match physically. They got bullied a little bit in this game. Still a team that I think is much better than it showed on Sunday, and I think a big reason of that was the injuries that we saw. So I think still a lot of positivity going forward. They can make it to the bye week if they can get a little bit healthier. Maybe they make some changes along this roster to kind of shore some things up. We could be talking and having a totally different feeling in a couple of weeks. So we're going to stick it out, and we'll be here with you until then. I think there's a lot of things to still be positive about, but we'll be back with you guys tomorrow. Until then, make sure to also hit us up, or to make sure, you subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from, so you can make sure you don't miss the show. And you also find us on Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. But tomorrow, buy or sell, biggest Charger storylines and overreactions. Make sure you guys hit us up. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.